Hey, in today's video, we'll create an entire backtesting system using only Google Sheets. By the end of the video, you will have a sheet that will automatically fetch live data. You will be able to change the tickers like this. And we will also be able to fully parametrize a Bollinger Bands strategy by changing the lookback periods from, for example, 20 to 10. Changing the multiplier of the standard deviations. Take a look at how the chart changes. And the number of years that we want to fetch the data for. For example, now we have it set at 2 years. Let's change it back to, for example, 4. And there we go. So, without any further ado, let's get started. So, before we get started, please consider liking the video and maybe even subscribing. Having said that, let's go ahead and create a new sheet and fetch the historical prices of a stock or cryptocurrency using the googlefinance function. Equals to googlefinance. The ticker or symbol is going to be Apple. The attribute is going to be all. The start date is going to be today minus 1 year or 365 days. The end date is going to be today, and the interval is going to be daily, I think. Let's see. Perfect. Okay. Let's continue by parametrizing a little bit what we have just done. Let's go ahead and create a few variables. Let's call them symbol. Here we'll write Apple. What else? The number of years. Let's say 2. And let's name those cells. Let's go ahead and set this one to year. And this one, let's call it also symbol. So now we can go back to the formula and say, instead of Apple, we write symbol. And here, every 365 days, we'll multiply them by the number of years. Sorry, year. That's right. So if we go ahead and change Apple to Microsoft, we'll see that it automatically changes. And if we set the period to, I don't know, 0.1 years, we'll see that we only get 10% of a year. So let's go ahead and change it back to 1 year and continue. So like I previously said, we're going to backtest a Bollinger Bands strategy. And this indicator looks as follows. Let's go ahead and Bollinger Bands Investopedia. Let's take a look at both. And here's the formula. I'll just copy it and paste it so that we have it at all times. There we go. Okay. So we will have 2 lines, the Bollinger up and the Bollinger down. Each one is going to be the MA, which is the moving average, of the TP, which is the typical price, which is none other than the high plus the low plus the close divided by 3. And for the typical price, we'll calculate the moving average over the last n periods. And to this, we're going to add or subtract, depending on if it's the Bollinger up or down, the standard deviation of the typical price over the same period, multiplied by a number, which is typically 2. So let's first calculate the typical price, which is, let's call it high, low, close, underscore 3. It could be the sum of the high, low, and close divided by 3. Or let's just go ahead and say it's the average of these 3. Let's copy that for the entire period. Let's make it 5 years here so that I have the formulas copied for a longer period. That's right. Okay, having this, let's go ahead and calculate the moving average for the previous n periods. First, let's do it in a static way, and after that, let's include a parameter so that we can change it easily. Let's move this. So let's go ahead and do equals to average of these previous periods. Let's see how many those were. Okay, that's exactly 20. You can go ahead and check it here. And now we will parameterize this using the offset function, which is as follows. Offset, and we'll use the cell reference. We'll use the high-low close. The offset number of rows is going to be 0. The offset number of columns is going to be 0. And 0. We're going to have a height of 20 and a width of 1. So as you can see, it goes from this one for the following 20 rows. But we want to have not the following, but the previous. So let's do the following. It has to be, the offset rows is going to be minus 20, I think. No, because it starts at 0 and then it offsets. So it's minus 19. There we go. So let's go ahead and parameterize this. Let's call it look back and set it to 20. And let's also call this cell look back. So now it's offset G21, look back minus 1, look back minus 1, and here we have look back. Sorry, not, that's minus 21, it's plus 1. There we go. And as you can see, we have the first was 57.46. That's right. And the last one was 57.62. So that's right. Now we are going to calculate the average over these cells. Average over that. Perfect. So let's cut it and paste it here. And now we can set it to 10, 5, 1, whatever. Let's copy it for the entire period. And let's see what happens if we change it back to 20. We have an error because there's an offset evaluates to an out of bounds range. Okay, that makes sense because there's no way to going back 19 additional rows if you're on the row number 2. So let's also check for this error and set it to none if it appears. So if parentheses is error, this entire thing, then blank. Otherwise, the formula. Let's go ahead and close it. That worked. Let's copy it and paste it. And that's right. Now if we change it to 5, 10, 15. Okay, I hope you understand what we did here. Let's name the column, and as you know, it's the moving average over the previous n periods. Now let's do the same but with the standard deviation. So we can go ahead and copy the entire formula and just change the average for the standard deviation. And here also standard deviation. There we go. Let's see if that worked. Let's copy it, paste it. Let's call it STD for standard deviation. And now let's go ahead and calculate the upper and lower Bollinger Bands. So let's copy paste this. Let's move this below. So BB lower, BB upper. And the BB lower is none other than the moving average plus the standard deviation multiplied by the multiplier. Let's create a multiplier. And let's set it to 2. And let's also name this cell. Let's name it multiplier. Okay, and now let's do this equals to the MA over the last n periods minus multiplier times the standard deviation. Autofill? Yes, why not? And the same is for the upper, equals to MA plus multiplier times the standard deviation. Autofill? Yes, thanks. Let's also copy it for the cells above. I don't like the fact that it is set to 0 if we don't have the MA and the STD. So let's also create a condition. If this is equal to 0, then empty, else the formula. Perfect. Let's copy it and paste it. And let's do the same for the upper. If this is equal to 0, then empty, else. Let's copy the formula again and paste it. Perfect. Okay, now it seems to work properly. So in the most obvious example of the Bollinger Band, we are supposed to buy the stock whenever the current price is above the upper Bollinger Band and sell it whenever it is below the Bollinger Band. Let's see if we should be buying or selling. Let's make some room here. And let's hide a few columns. Maybe the volume we won't be needing. Hide column. That's it. Okay. We will buy if, let's move this away, if the close is greater than the BB upper. Let's autofill. Also, we will sell if the close is below the Bollinger Band lower. Let's copy this for the cells above. And I won't add a condition since we don't have the stock, so it won't be selling it. We should also have a cell that checks whenever we have a buy or sell signal and we already have the stock or not. So let's do that also. So that could be the following. Let's call it holding. And it would be if, let's make some if buy is true equals true, then true. Otherwise, if sell equals true, then false. Otherwise, whatever we had before. I hope that makes sense. And now that we have this formula, I should also avoid having look-ahead bias. So everything is going to be done checking the previous signal. So we will be holding the stock if in the previous period we received a buy signal, and we will be selling it if in the previous period also we received a sell signal. So let's go ahead and instead of checking the current row, let's check the row immediately before. Instead of L15, it's 14. Let's copy it for the cells above. And on the first one, we are not going to be holding, so let's call it false. So let's see if that is really working. So let's go ahead and look for the first time that we have a true buy signal. Here it is. And we are not holding on that period because we are buying it on the close. So we have it on the next period. That's working fine. And it turns false, but since we bought it, we still are holding it. And that should not be happening because nothing changed here, but we are not holding it anymore. Let's see. If this equals to true, then true. Else, if this one equals to true, then this is false. Otherwise, there we go. It's not this cell, it's the next one. Instead of M, it's cell N. Let's go ahead and replace it everywhere. Let's check it again. And this is false. And let's check it again. So we are buying here for the first time. So we are holding it on the next period. And it changes here because we have a sell signal in here. So in the next period, we don't hold it anymore. Now what we have to do is calculate the returns of a buy and hold strategy. That is going to be our benchmark, and also of our Bollinger Bands strategy. So let's move this one more time again and do a overall return. And this is none other than the natural logarithm of the close divided by the close on the previous period. I should have used the autofill. No regrets. And the return of our strategy is going to be this return whenever we are holding it. So let's name the column return of the strategy. And it's going to be this multiplied by holding. And we multiply it because true equals to 1 and false equals to 0. So when it's false, we are multiplying the return times 0. So we won't have any return because we are not holding the stock. As you can see, we are having the same return here because we are holding the stock due to the fact that we have a buy signal on the previous period. Let's format it a little bit. As a percentage. We could also go ahead and plot everything. So what we would like to plot is the close, the lower and the upper Bollinger Band. So let's do that. Let's select everything and do the following. Insert chart. And that's too much. Let's remove the open. Let's remove the high. Let's remove the low. Let's keep the close. I don't want this one, nor this one, nor this one. And the date. Let's hide the return. Let's hide this. And it's not a column chart, it's a line. There we go. And on the x-axis, I want the dates. That's perfect. Let's move it here. Okay, and let's leave that for a while. And what do I have to do? Okay, yes, calculate the returns of both the buy and hold and our strategy. So let's call this parameters. Let's format everything a little bit. Let's remove that, italic. and returns. We will have the returns of the buy and hold and of the strategy. And the buy and hold is just the sum of the returns, and the strategy is the same, sum of the strategy. But we have everything expressed in continuous returns, and normally we would prefer to have it expressed in arithmetic returns. If you're not following what I'm saying, let's take a look at the return over the period. That's none other than the latest close divided by the first close minus 1. And as you can see, it's very different to this one. So in order to transform the continuous return to a discrete return, we have to take the exponent of this, exponent of the sum of the logarithmic returns, and subtract 1. And now, lucky for me, they are the same. That would have been a problem if they were different. And the same for the strategy. It's the of this, close parentheses, minus 1. And let's transform it to percentages. So now let's hide a few columns that we don't usually need, now that we already have them calculated. Let's hide these ones. I also don't want the buy and sell signals, just the holding. Let's hide the high-low close divided by 3. And this already looks pretty good. Let's also add some conditional formatting, maybe. Let's select both columns, go to Format, Conditional Formatting, and single color. And if it is greater than 0, that's right, I want it in green, and add another rule. And if it is less than 0, I want it to be in some kind of red, but not the font, the background. And let's also add a rule for when it's 0. Add another rule. If it is equal to 0, let's do it in a boring gray. There we go. So let's recap everything. We can go ahead and change the number of years that we are going to backtest. Let's change it from 5 to 3. And as you can see, everything changes. This is a problem because why? We have division by 0, so we should add another condition. Function divide parameter 2 cannot be 0. Okay, so we should be adding another condition before finishing this video. So let's do that. If, again, is error, whether a value is an, we have 2. Whether a value is an error other than an A. Now let's do error. There we go. This thing, then blank. Otherwise, the formula. This is the formula. Close parentheses. And that did not work. If is error this thing, then I have to close this. Then blank, else the formula. What is missing now? There we go. Okay, There's no need to do it for the return strategy column because it just is this column multiplied by the holding. So let's go ahead and copy and paste this for the entire period. And that's okay. And if we set it to 1 year, that works beautifully. And if we change the look back from 15 to 20, what happened? That happened. This is going to change to 20. And if we change the multiplier, where is my chart? Here's the chart. You can see that now the Bollinger Bands are pretty close to each other, but if we increase the multiplier here from 2 standard deviations to, I don't know, let's exaggerate everything and set it to 10, you'll see that the strategy does not work, does not have a return, because over the entire period, the closing price never crosses 10 times the standard deviation over the 20 previous periods. So we are just holding cash, and cash does not have any return. If we check at the chart, you can see this visually. The Bollinger Bands are now very far away from each other and also from the close, meaning that we will never cross them and we will never create buy or sell signals. So let's also check if we can change the symbol. Let's change it from Microsoft to GameStop and reduce the multiplier from 10 to 2. And this worked, but our strategy has a lower return than the buy and hold, but this is due to the fact that everything is increasing in value in this period. So let's also add a last measure to check our exposure to the market, which is none other than the percentage of the days that we are having a position in a given stock, meaning that we were having an exposure to the risk of the given symbol. So that's going to be exposure is going to be the count if of our holdings, and the condition is going to be true. So we were holding it 1,204 days. Let's divide that by the entire period, and let's divide it by the total amount of rows. Count A, I think it is, of our holdings. 1,258. So that's pretty good. We are only holding it for less than 50% of the days, and we are having a somewhat good return over the past 5 years. But we are, of course, foregoing some returns due to the fact that we are not exposed to the market. Okay, you can go ahead and format everything to make it look nicer. For example, making a table here, formatting these things here. But I think we covered the most important things, and the aesthetics of the sheet is out of the scope of this video. So, as I said before, if you found this video helpful, please consider liking and even subscribing to the channel to stay up to date with my newest content. And I guess I see you in the next video. Bye!